If the road were easy, everyone would do it. We don't shy away from challenges. We dive in. And now, live from an undisclosed location in FEMA Region 10, it's your host, Joshua Michael.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Joshua Michael, Non-Compliant America. And people are gathering all over the world right now in the name of Charlie Kirk and everything that he stood for. And I want to get into a lot of those details in regards to what's happening, what's next. We can dive in a little bit. I got my buddy Jeremy James riding with me today, shotgun, and we're going to kind of dive into some of the conspiracy stuff because we like to involve the truth. I know that they found the shooter, the supposed shooter, the single lone gunman, but it's all just kind of speculative in regards to everything else. And the premise of this show is everything that we're always trying to ask is, let's get down to the truth. And the better question is will we ever know the truth? The reality is we very likely will not. But we like to explore things, we like to ask questions, and we like to have accountability. And we'll go whichever direction and anywhere leads the case. I hope that you guys have had a great summer. We all know that it's over. And so in that dude, I'd like to introduce Jeremy James. He is a confidant, great friend of mine, and we've been having discussions of just the effects that this entire situation that's transpired with the death of Charlie Kirk, it's just mind-blowing. I mean, the entire country and the entire world for that is mourning for everything that they stood for. But there's some interesting things that we've been talking about, and we'd like to address those with you. If you have any input after the show, feel free to follow me on X at noncompliantaf, or you can go to noncompliantamerica.com or send me an email, jm@noncompliantamerica.com. So, Jeremy, how are you today, brother? I know it's been a really hard past few days with the death of Charlie Kirk, and we mourn for his family, we mourn for his friends, and I didn't know him personally, but you didn't know him personally, but you were telling me something. I think this would be a good place to start, is how politically kind of uninvolved you were prior to Charlie Kirk, and how Charlie Kirk actually played a huge role in yourself and your personal experience and kind of your personal growth and development. I think that's a very important place to start, just to show the level of impact that this guy, and by all means, everybody knows Charlie Kirk had a huge impact. But I guess just start there. Let's talk about your journey, kind of what he's meant to you, and kind of fast forward into today.
Yeah, well, I started listening to Charlie Kirk about 7 or 8 years ago, actually, and I wasn't really into politics at all. And I think what really drew me to him was the fact that he was always trying to hear the other side. And that goes really well with the way I am generally. I'm one of those people that likes to say, okay, let's stop for a second and figure out why someone did something, what their intent was, as opposed to just looking at the reactionary. And I think Charlie was good at that. He set up a forum where anybody could speak. And I think that's terrifying to some people, but we don't all have to agree.
Well, and that was the true testament of Charlie is the sword of truth, is that he would literally go into any situation at any time because he knew that he had the truth on his side, and he would try to bridge that gap of understanding and try to virtually unwind the woke mind virus that Elon Musk talks about, and being able to find some common ground with these people. That was really his power and his sword, and it was very, very effective, especially with the youth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And the fact that, you were speaking earlier about how difficult this has been. It affected me personally, really. It hit me hard. It was a heavy thing to bear. And kind of what's the light in that, I think, is that now seeing what's happening around the world, the impact that he truly had. It's unfortunate that we lost Charlie, but because we lost Charlie, he's changing the world.
I absolutely, I 100% agree. And I want to get into that and talk about, what's next and what's coming and what do you see the transformation. I mean, I've already seen it. You can see it all over social media as people are like, hey, we are no longer compromising. We are no longer going to let this indoctrination center. And I want to talk a little bit about the indoctrination of the college system, the education infrastructure, and how they took, we're just going to go off for this particular argument that this is a lone gunman. This is a shooter that was essentially radicalized, but he seemed to have a pretty regular upbringing. He had a hunting background. They went to Alaska. They went fishing. They went all these normal, what you would consider like rural upbringing. And it's in Utah of all places. And he seemed pretty normal. Yeah, he spent a lot of time gaming and on the computer and everything else, but he didn't seem like a crazy lunatic radical with pink hair. And what was the transformation? Was he always like that? Because his family seemed pretty normal and stable. And so I think that there's some correlation with him going to college and just that transformation. Folks, do you understand, like when Obama basically rolled out the free tuition for college, it's because they knew that they had the education system on lockdown and that they could then build what he has always talked about is his brown shirt army of the youth, i.e. the brown shirts, the Hitler Youth, all of these infrastructures for revolutionary situations in which we're now experiencing the ramifications for that. Yet all these kids, they went to school and they're normal kids and they come out. You know, I have a cousin who is a radical and she's almost 30 and she's like a career college student and is completely indoctrinated into the leftist ideology, the communist ideology, and she hates Trump. There's no getting around it. She can't have a conversation. She can't do anything. But we all grew up together. And so this stuff has to change. It has to shift. If your kids are thinking about going to college, you might want to think again at this point until this stuff gets fixed, because you might be sending a perfectly good intentioned person that might be impressionable, but they have years and years and years and years of indoctrination, manipulation tactics that they've embedded into these colleges, that they're brainwashing the youth into it. The same reason you didn't have your kid go to school to wear a mask, or for the COVID lockdowns, you started homeschooling your kid, is the same thing. Colleges are not off limits. Colleges are the elephant in the room for this new revolutionary system that they're trying to build. And I just think that Charlie played such an integral part in unwinding that so effectively with tens of millions of people. That's why they had to take him out. And another interesting thing of who they is and where the potential of other players that may or may not be involved, I want to get into it with Jeremy on the next segment, is what would be the motivation to do that? Obviously, he had a lot of people that disagreed with him. But an interesting fact is the fact this feels very JFK-esque in regards to this assassination. The lone gunman on the roof, and they found him shortly after. We haven't even heard anything that this guy has said. There's been no public testimony about it. There's been nothing, whereas what possibly could have potentially happened versus what we're being told, it all just feels a little bit too clean. You got Kash Patel and Bongino coming on. First thing that they say, first thing at that press conference, the first thing that they say is, we got him, you know? And in other words, stop investigating, stop looking, don't peek anymore. All these independent online journalists that are just really diving into the facts and finding more things. It's like, stop, guys, we found the guy. And it's almost a perfect layout of how it happened. You know, there wasn't any like weird holes. It was like they filled all the holes as people were starting to explore other things, other potential actors that could be playing a part in this, all this stuff. We have to keep asking questions. Yes, we'll probably never figure out exactly what happened. But the way that you look at who the potential actors are is you look at what happens after. Who's seizing the opportunity? I know Ben Shapiro is talking about carrying the bloody microphone of Charlie Kirk, and he's going to carry on the TPUSA legacy, in which him and Charlie weren't getting along. I don't know if you've seen the last interview that they did together. Charlie's asking legitimate questions, and it's all tied to the forbidden fruit of Israel. You can't talk about Israel. Israel is our greatest ally, you know? And so it just begs the question, you know, what is actually behind this? What's going on with it and everything else? I mean, your thoughts, Jeremy, on all of that?
Well, I mean, I think to start off with the college campuses and stuff, that's exactly what Charlie did. Is he went to college, he went to a semester of college, and he saw the indoctrination right in the beginning. And that's where he chose to fight his fight, because he was there firsthand. And he had the knowledge of saying exactly what you're saying, the indoctrination of our youth, our young people that are impressionable at that age, and they don't know what's better for them. And someone sits there and spoon feeds them, and then they fall into the left-leaning category. And these are just places where they create what, I mean, in basis is communism. I mean, really is what it is that these people want full government control and to take the rights away from people. You know, hey, we're not allowed to say specific things on the right or whatever. And so, you know, we respect other people and we do that. And then, but if you say something that the left doesn't like Charlie did all the time, then I mean, look at what happens. And further to your point, you know, all these kids, one of these kids that this happened to, or the kid, excuse me, the kid that they've got, you know, we've got the guy. What you were saying there was, you know, the FBI is saying basically stop looking, and that pretty much goes against everything Charlie was about, right?
Exactly. And so this, so rewind, you know, obviously a couple days ago was 9/11, and remember the kind of media blitz surrounding Osama bin Laden, and that he was the orchestrator behind the entire thing. He's the guy. We're going to go get him in Afghanistan. Everybody, if you're not with us, you're against us. You know, all of the same type of rhetoric. And I'm by all means, I absolutely 100% respect Charlie and his family and everything that he did. And I don't wish to speak any ill will toward this disaster, right? This tragedy that happened with him. But it is begging the question and the uncloaking that's happening. I'm seeing us gear closer toward a civil war in which we are actually in a war. We've been in a war with the communists for a very long time. And they cloak as the Democrats, some Republicans, mostly Oregon Republicans, that are all tied in with this. It's kind of an uncloaking that's happening to where I think a lot of people are realizing the real fight that Charlie was fighting for, but also the real fight that we're in and the dire straits that we're in as a country and what the ramifications are, but also how far down the rabbit hole we've gone by overindulging in sports and food and pleasure and socializing. And, you know, most of us are working ourselves to death to where we're kind of fell asleep at the wheel for a long time. I feel like this moment in history is all of that is being uncloaked and people are starting to realize real life that we're living in. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot more to get into with that too. With what's happening after this passing of Charlie.
Yeah. Hold that thought. We got Jeremy James with us right now. I'm Joshua Michael, Noncompliant America. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be more right on the other side of this break. All right, welcome back. Second segment, Joshua Michael, Non-Compliant America. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure to follow me on X at NoncompliantAF. I do a lot of posting. We're talking about the Charlie Kirk situation. What does that mean for the future of this country? Who the potential bad actors are that were involved? Was it the lone gunman that everybody's saying? It's kind of weird. It's kind of sus. It's always sus when the FBI involves. They came swooping in, roaring in, taking charge of everything, kind of, restricting us, giving us very mild pictures. An interesting report that I saw in regards to that particular campus, there was a guy, he actually brought the work order forward and showed that they added 1,800 or 2,200 cameras. I don't know exactly, but they just did a huge renovation these past couple years with 1080p HD cameras. It's actually interesting on how limited we were on all that footage, and leave it to the FBI to go to Epstein's Island and seize all the things, and that kind of goes into the rabbit hole. And I just, I don't trust Cash. I think he's doing a horrible job. I think that they're just running PR. He pledged that he would come in nonpartisan and, act in good faith on behalf of the American people. And this press conference, first thing he talks about is thanking President Trump and how great President Trump is. And had President Trump not done this, not done that, then it wouldn't be for President Trump. And I get it. But at the same time, it's like, we need to have raw intel. We need to have, especially if they're trying to restore transparency within the government. I think that is a huge point. I think somebody like Ivan Ranklin, if Ivan Ranklin was in there, which he's been begging to try to get in there and help these guys, you'll get a lot more open transparency. And the bigger reason is why are they operating that way? And is the reality that the deep state or the executive state has such a long reach that it doesn't matter who you put at the head of it, they're still going to be bad actors. And we know that they are, but are they going to have that much of an effect? So there's a lot of things you were talking about on the break, Jeremy. I want to get into that, of what you were saying about the Charlie situation. Could you repeat what you were saying?
Well, I was just talking about the fact that, he was obviously, gunned down. And in my opinion, there's not enough information to point to who did it, and then, like you said, the FBI comes in and says, we need to stop talking about this. We need to stop looking at it. Everything's done. Let's wrap it up with a bow. It's all nice and tidy. But who stood to gain from it? And is their plan working, or is it backfiring, Because right now, the reaction, I think, is bigger than anybody expected it could have ever been. And because of that, you've got movements happening worldwide. And me, as just a regular guy, I never would have thought, there's going to be 1 million people in the UK in 2 days celebrating life for Charlie. And so it begs the question of what the intent was. Why are you trying to be transparent, but also telling us to stop asking questions as in regards to the FBI?
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton of unanswered questions. For example, the two men that got arrested and said, we shot Charlie Kirk, right? Then they got released, and then this happened. One of those men did the same thing at the Boston bombing. He did the same thing at 9/11. And the statistical probability of that being the case is 0.000005. It's like 1 out of billions and billions of the statistical probability that he would be there on that day, at those times, at those moments. That's a really interesting thing. That's a really interesting thing exploring. Who is this guy, right? The guy that they showed, oh, we got him, he's arrested. Everybody stopped looking. Then the internet started digging more and pushing back on this stuff to then we'll discover this other guy. But they were also exploring this mysterious plane that took off and it went dark, and now suddenly it didn't actually go dark for 3 or 4 hours out of Utah, the airport, right down the street. So there's just a lot of questions that should potentially be answered, but we can talk about those all day long, and it's a huge inevitable rabbit hole. Yes, we'll probably never get the answer, but the big topic, I think, is where do we go from here? What's going to be happening now? We see these movements rising up. We see Britain rising up. There's, motorcades in Africa. I mean, all over. Charlie's impact was so vast and so large and so positive that the reaction, I think, is a great thing toward restoring this republic, which I think is what Charlie's entire goal was.
And I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with that, because he's been trying to do what is now happening on college campuses for years. He started TPUSA when he was 19. I mean, he was 31 years old when he passed. And over that amount of time, all he's done is tried to have the impact that now in his passing he's receiving. But it's on a level that I don't think anybody could have predicted.
Well, I don't think it's even been it's quantified at this point. I think the body's still cold, essentially. It's still warm, for that matter. I don't think the quantification of that. But an interesting thing is, they asked the question, why Charlie? Why Charlie? And Charlie, his birthday's coming up. He would have been 31, 32. He would have been 32. So an interesting point that may or may not be relevant. And this is something that I want to get in on the other side. But think about this. He would have been 35 right before the cutoff for running in 2028. He would have been JFK 2.0 on steroids. Megyn Kelly even stated he had such a vast pull between all the establishment Republicans. They had to eat out of his palm because he was able to sway the swing states by 10 points in whichever direction that we want. Charlie Kirk was a badass, and we should all give him praise, and may he rest in peace. We'll be right back. I'm going to change this opening song. I played it once. It's like, whatever.
Don't let them take.
All right, welcome back, folks. Third segment, Josh and Michael, Not Compliant America. Thank you very much for joining me. September 13th, 2025. And we have to dedicate this show to Charlie Kirk because he was such a powerful voice and such a great father. He was a great friend. He was a great influencer. He understood the dynamics of social media. He knew the power of the youth. He was the youth. And he kind of rode that train, rode that wave on really making an impact of the world, kind of reestablishing morals, reestablishing balance, reestablishing, common sense. He was more of like a centrist versus a hardcore right radical that the media tries to portray him as he's some, radical conservative activist. Like when you hear those words, they're trigger words to try to portray somebody that would be, I would say, more extreme in the sense where he's going on college campuses unarmed, sitting there, giving people a microphone, giving people a platform to really vet their views and say, hey, and he's just simply a soft hand saying, hey, how did you get here? How did you come up with that? What about this, and this? And really provoking thought amongst the youth to get people to break out of the spell of this indoctrination of screen time that, is a epidemic that, Kids are detaching from their parents. Parents aren't communicating with their kids. There's no impact. There's no family dinners. There's no sit around the table. There's no go on hikes together or go just walk around the neighborhood and ride your bikes. And nobody's doing that anymore. And Charlie, I think, really understood that for the future. And if we were going to have a future, not be trapped in these digital gulags of separation, completely being manipulated by these big corporations and, marketing advertisers and just really touching the youth. I mean, down to 2, 3, 4-year-olds sitting at dinner with headphones and their iPads and all this crazy nonsense. He was able to break out of that and create this hybrid environment where it's kind of like Morpheus telling Neo before he takes the pill, like, hey, you can take the red pill or you can take the blue pill, but you can't go back. And just kind of unwinding the woke mind virus matrix that I think a lot of people are stuck in, which is why we have high suicide rates. I mean, with young kids, committing suicide and just not having that connection, because I think we all long for that connection. We all long for that connection of love and appreciation and friendship and hardship. I think hardship is very important. It's a natural cycle in life. Hard times create strong men. And we all have to have that, but we're in such a high society, high, gratification, instant gratification lifestyle that when something becomes too challenging, that we just want to disconnect. And to be honest, it's easy to be a leftist. It's easy to be a communist. It's easy to be a socialist. It's easy to be a Democrat because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to operate. You don't have to have any accountability. You don't have to have any of these things. It's much more challenging to have some form of moral compass in today's society. And it's lonely. And I think more and more people are starting to realize that, and they're turning their phones off. They're disconnecting. They're having these hard conversations at the dinner table. Charlie kind of gave people the tools and the platform and paved the way for the youth to be able to kind of stand out in that sense. And he was very effective and very influential. And so the impact that I'm seeing is a huge awakening that's happening amongst everybody across the world, where they're like, hey, we can't just stand by and let Charlie's name be in vain. But I mean, I'm finding people that didn't even know who Charlie was, and they're starting to look at everything that he was saying and everything he was doing. To be honest with you, I didn't follow Charlie that much. He was doing his own thing. I didn't follow Charlie that hard. I knew what he was doing was good. I knew that he just seemed too soft for me, right? He wasn't hardcore, but I also understand his position with what he was doing is he had to ride that line in order to be effective, right? And so it was very powerful, very great, but we were getting into him turning 35 and potentially running for president. I think that is a huge unspoken reason why they decided to take him out. I mean, if you think next year they do the midterms, and then whomever's running for president, that's when they really start, is about 2 years in advance. And I think that he was going to make a run for president at 35. I think he probably would have won by then. The younger kids, with all the red pilling that he was doing with them, would have had his back. He would have had as big of base as Trump. Probably bigger, yeah. And so it just begs the question when we look at this lone gunman of, oh, hey, it's, we can't look at it. We have to factor that part in too, because I think that does play a huge role. And with him, and I'm not blaming Israel, I'm not saying Israel was part of any of this, but you do have to ask the question, is that he was kind of uncloaking the questions behind Israel straight to Ben Shapiro. He was on PBD talking about, October 7th and how it just kind of seemed weird. And he started asking questions. And it just begs the question. Obviously, we'll never figure it out, but it's good to explore down to the truth of what's really going on. And then we also want to see the effects of like, where are things going to go? Is this going to create more turmoil in the United States, or is it going to create more peace? Are people going to be less tolerant or more tolerant? Is this event going to polarize the nation, which I believe the nation needs to be polarized, because we've been getting railroaded as conservatives, as having beliefs that don't conform with all of mainstream media, all of the industry, everything else. We have to be able to have a hard kind of, I don't know, we're hitting a brick wall essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I do. I want to touch on something you said earlier, though, that you know, when you said you didn't follow Charlie, I knew Charlie, and I've known Charlie for years, not personally, but I've followed him, and I think that is where his impact came. He had so much out there, so much footage of him on these college campuses, so much of what he did was on the internet, and now he was politically assassinated, and it was very, very visible to the whole world. And then people were like, well, why was he assassinated, right? And if you go through Charlie's videos, he's not a disrespectful guy. Yep. He always gave a platform. I mean, I've seen shots of him where he's telling his crowd, like, hey, if someone that doesn't believe what you believe comes up here, you keep your mouth shut, you give them respect. And I think that's where the mass of the impact is coming, is that people that don't know who he was, this thing is blowing up worldwide. So they're looking up Charlie Kirk, and they're seeing that he was just a regular guy trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. And he did it so well. And it was just, you know, looking at that. But back to your point is that I started doing that very thing. And so now I'm looking at all the stuff that he was doing, and I'm like, wow, powerful, great dude. The guy was amazing. He had 2 young girls, and a beautiful wife, and he was just a regular guy that just understood things more than most people, but he was also willing to put his neck out on the line. And it was a phenomenal movement that he started. And I don't think by any means it's ending. I think it's only going to amplify all of the things. And with having all of the content that he had online, there's so many archives, so many instances, so many situations now that the rest of the public is going to be able to go resonate with, which I think is going to only make his messaging and his impact that much bigger.
I couldn't agree more. And his biggest following, his biggest thing was his faith, right? And, that's why we call him a martyr, because he died for what he believed in. And it's, people can resonate with it because it's so easy to resonate with a guy being a regular person, just trying to talk to people. And that's what he always said. He said, when we stop having conversations in this country is where violence begins. And the people, whoever shot him either didn't want him to have any more conversations because he was so impactful, or the people that shot him knew how impactful he would be in death. And it's speculatory on every level on what actually happened, and we'll never know how it happened. But I think whoever, took Charlie from us underestimated the amount of impact he would have, especially across the world.
Absolutely. And so we have to keep asking questions. We have to keep diving in to find out, what actually happened to Charlie. Who were the players? Who are the bad actors behind that? We can't just go with the lone gunman theory and stick with that. We're here to ask questions. If you guys have any insight or any perspectives, feel free to hit me up on X at noncompliantaf. And we're going to get into some more stories here with the break coming up. But Jeremy, this is your first radio thing, and you're just a regular guy, just out doing, God's work and just providing for your family and everything else. What do you think about this?
The radio?
Yeah.
It's awesome, man. It's, these are things that interest me, and I think that interests a lot of people, especially now in light of everything. And it's nice to have a voice. And, like I said, I'm a regular guy, not unlike Charlie Kirk. I'm willing to talk to anybody about anything, and I just want to have a good time.
Me and my buddy.
That's right. We'll be right back.
This money. Yeah, I know it's rude to be bragging. They never catching us slacking. Me and my buddy, we working hard for this money.
If the road were easy, everyone would take it. We don't shy away from challenges. We dive in. And now, live from an undisclosed location in
even know
FEMA
I do
Region
this radio
10,
show?
it's your
Have you listened to this show
host,
before?
Joshua Michael.
I love it. Welcome back, folks. Joshua Michael, Non-Compliant America. We're going to get into some other news kind of related to the Charlie thing, kind of what the impact is, how it's affecting teachers and professors and, CEOs and executives and marketing directors and
Secret Service agents
and all these people that are just running their mouth on the internet saying, no, good riddance, I'm glad he's dead, things like that. In Forest Grove, middle school science teacher in Forest Grove has been placed on administrative leave and resigned from his local city council role after suggesting in a Facebook post that there was no suggestion about it. He said it. So another slant by the, KGW. Good job, guys. You're really killing it. We're into your game. We know what you're doing. But in a Facebook post of conservative activist Charlie Kirk was asking to be shot and killed. That's what they're saying. There's now lists going around of all the people that are saying all these negative things. And I get it. I think it's horrendous. It does kind of balance on that part of free speech that I have a hard time, absolutely lose your job. That's cool. That's great. And I don't think that it's necessarily wrong that that's happening. And it's good that these people are getting outed. But as a society, this is, I think, the most peaceful, best reaction you can have is, hey, we don't want you here. You lose your job. You lose your standing, everything else. It's a slippery slope to where this herd-like mentality can really take root. And just like anything, it's like you can no longer say these specific words. Otherwise, you're a racist or you're a bigot or you're an anti-Semite. I think it's important to use those words because when they start controlling speech, controlling language, it's a slippery slope that slowly then trickles into other aspects of our lives. And so as things like this are happening, I think is great. I think any of these communists, and we're not calling them liberals anymore, they're communists because that's absolutely what they've been exposed to be. We just stop buying their food. We stop buying their products. We stop listening to their music. We stop doing everything, and we peacefully, through kind of transcending bigger than them, that's the real way. And I think that's kind of the Charlie way of doing things in this movement that's building. We don't want to go get violent. We won't want to meet these guys at the streets and go head to head and get suckered in like we did on January 6th or the Proud Boys did and how they got bamboozled, or the Oath Keepers. And just that natural reaction to all the lockdowns and the Antifa groups is we can win by simply deeming them irrelevant to our society. And we can operate in a society where it's simple. No, that doesn't happen here. No, you can't go into a girl's bathroom when you're a male. We're not doing that. Kind of like, just imagine if the whole country turns into Wyoming. I think that is where we're headed. And I think it is going to create a contrast. We're going to have more outcry. But I also think that the pump has now been primed in our society to where there's so much momentum behind this Charlie Kirk thing, and there's so much resistance that there could potentially be a bigger catalyst event that is now we will then come to what the whole purpose and reasoning was for this, that we don't want to fall into of this just overpouring or overcompensating reaction to a potential whatever may happen, some type of false flag to herd us back into a more COVID-like state, giving government more control. I think the government should have way less control. I think that we need to get the government out of our education system, out of so many different things, and we start operating as Americans in our entirety and restore the Constitution for what it is and kind of eliminate the bureaucracies that have way too much oversight, that have been basically suppressing and oppressing us for decades, that we've essentially become Stockholm Syndrome victims to our captors. And so that's what I see kind of happening as far as a reaction going, as people then kind of light bulbing, hey, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm just not going to, I'm going to engage in a very hardline manner, but I'm just not going to participate in the nonsense of, you want to dress up like a furry, I'm not going to pretend that you're a cat. Dude, you should probably go get some counseling, or maybe you should be in the psych ward down the street. That's where you belong, and I'm going to let everybody know, and I'm going to tell you to your face publicly. You know, I just think that acceptance for this mental disorder that's been going around, which essentially could have bred this particular shooter, and we're just done with it.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, man, because there's so many things. This is the Charlie Kirk effect here, happening in real time. He wanted people to question other people, and prior to his death, people, just people like me, you know what? I'm just going to let that guy be, because, they don't have any power. There's no consequence for that person doing something. Now we're seeing real world consequence. Now we're seeing a man taken from his family, his 2 little girls, because of what he said. And so now the people that on the right, the conservatives that would say, hey, you know what? Just let that person be. Now they're like, no, you're wrong, and I'm going to point it out. And I think that is what's happening around the world. People are seeing that this man was murdered, and he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just talking to people. And if that's enough to get somebody killed, then everybody else, I've seen multiple times, you killed Charlie Kirk, but there's 1,000 million, 100 million more of us that just woke up, because we're not going to sit down and say, it's fine if you want to go, be ranting at whatever political event, we're not going to put up with it anymore.
Yeah. And your child comes home from school and says, Mommy, my teacher says I can be a girl. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. Write up to the teacher, file a report, make their lives a living hell. And you know what? They should be fired. They should be fired for that. And I think just like what happened during COVID, when all the parents started to realize what the actual education system was doing to the kids, they're now going to do that same thing tenfold. We're done. We're not compromising anymore. We're not letting you play your stupid little LARPing games. We're not letting you destroy our cities. We're not letting you indoctrinate our kids. We're not letting you go into the boys and girls restroom. And we're not doing any of that anymore. And I think the population, not just in the United States, I think it definitely in Britain too, because keep in mind, guys, Britain has been undergoing the same things that we've been undergoing for probably a decade longer than since it came to the United States. So if you want to see the pathway of what these infrastructures, of how badly they can drag down a society, but also understand that it is a weapon to destroy the culture in itself, and to where everybody becomes like just a asexual bot that is accompanied by the advertisers and all this stuff. Like, we're done with that. We like America. We like American cheeseburgers. We like American infrastructure. We like the American power, the American dream, the American system. The American people are not racist. They're not bad. They just want to live their lives and raise their kids in a traditional sense. And I think people are going to gravitate toward that way, way more. And again, thank you guys very much for listening. I'm Joshua Michael, Non-Compliant America. Jeremy James, thank you so much, dude, for coming on. And I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your perspective. And this has been fun. We'll have to have you on again. Yeah. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'd love to come back. Cool, man. Stay safe out there, guys. We'll see you next week.